Yes. All right, Rob, welcome to the podcast. For those of you who have no idea who Rob is, we actually did a podcast about 2 weeks ago, which he published yesterday, actually, called I think it was Coffee and Code Podcast or Code and Coffee Podcast, one of those two.
Coffee and Coding Podcast.
Coffee and Coding Podcast. And there's links down below, by the way, so you can check out his podcast. We did a really great podcast. He asked me a lot of different questions. I'll actually pull up kind of what the things we talked about here.
We talked about a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not even going to listen. We talked about all kinds of stuff from anywhere from like my journey to like being a YouTube creator to like building apps to
building PCs,
all kinds of stuff. So anyway, definitely go check that out. So, but today I'm gonna interview Rob as a change, because last time he interviewed me. He's actually a freelance Android developer. He's been a freelance Android developer for 4 or 5 years, I believe you said, right, Rob?
Oh no, 8 years.
8. Okay, sorry. Yeah. I'm gonna change the description of this video because
that's totally fine.
that is a lot more experience than I had. So let's say 8 years. There we go. And we're going to talk about his career and how he makes money, how he got started, all of these kinds of things. Awesome. So yeah, Rob, tell me, I guess, how you got into freelancing to begin with. Like, where did you start?
So I started. So I'll try and cut it to a shorter story than it is. So I did a computer science degree, involved very little programming. When I finished that, I got a job as an IT consultant, which basically, when they call you an IT consultant, at least in the UK, basically means we can get you to do anything we want with computers. So you have no defined role. And I knew within the first week that I hated this job. It was basically support, website support. You were on call. You were working. Like, there was one point where I was on a project working in VB6, and this is in like,
what's VB6?
Exactly. It's a programming language that nobody used.
Oh, it's a language. Okay.
Yeah. And it's a government project, and the program was written inside Microsoft Excel. So this is how crazy we're talking. So anyway, so while I was there, I was terrible at that job. I used to turn up super late. Nobody noticed because my job was not that important. And so I started to learn Android on the side because I got my first Android phone, and I read an article on Lifehacker that was, it was basically, this is everything our favorite to do, like the best to do app would have. So in my head, I was like $. I was like, right, I'm going to build this app. It's going to be the best to do app ever, and I'm going to make tons of money. So I started learning Android to build that. And I remember the first app I built was terrible. I didn't know anything about list view. So I have a to-do list where I'm drawing in code, first row, text view.
Oh, image. Okay. Yeah.
And so, trying to scroll this thing was taking forever. But anyways, that's how I got my start.
Yeah.
And then I think I released maybe like 4 different apps while I was working at this company, kind of as a hobby, and I really liked it. So I quit the job, I think maybe after like 16 months or something, and I gave myself 6 months. If I can make money doing Android, I'm going to do that, and if not, I'm going to get another job. And it turns out that I think maybe 4 months later, I released an app that did fairly well, and it made a decent amount of money in a really small amount of time. So I was like, okay, cool, that will set me up for a while. And then after that, I started to pick up contract work. I think the first one I got was from maybe Upworks or Freelancer, something like that. And then eventually I got a contract with a startup. And then since then, I've been doing contract work ever since.
Wow, that's really cool. So like your first couple apps, like you said, like the first 4 apps, you put those all in the App Store?
Yeah.
Okay, so and then you kind of hit one that was like, oh, okay, this one made some money. Like, this is a livable wage sort of thing.
Yeah, so I had no idea what I was doing. The first app I released, and I think it did 5,000 downloads in a year.
So by the way, sorry, how long ago is this? This is like 7 years ago, 8 years ago?
The first app I released was, I think it was 2012. Like April 2012, and it did 5,000 downloads in the first year. So I thought that was great. It's not, like, if anybody's listening, like, it's cool, but that's not a livable wage. It didn't earn any money. And then I just came up with other ideas for apps, and I released them. And then at one point, Facebook released this app, their messenger app, which they first introduced chat heads, which I think was 2013. And I basically created a project to figure out how did they do chat heads, because, you're drawing on the screen, you're drawing on top of every single app. I thought it was cool. So I did it. I figured out how they did it. And then I thought, right, I'm going to see if I can make chat heads for every notification on my phone. And that was the app that I built.
I don't even know what a chat head is. Could you
Right. So I think it's pretty common, and I'm pretty sure Android 11 now it's going to be part of like the notification system. But essentially, it's you get a message, and instead of, or as well as you getting a notification in your status bar, you get a little picture of whoever sent you that message pop up on your phone, just in the corner like a little bubble, and then it just sits on the side of your screen.
Okay.
And you've probably seen it. And then if you tap it like slides out. So,
yeah. So it's like the messenger app, how it kind of sits on top of everything, and it's like how, and you have those little chat. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I basically built a version of that would basically show you all of your notifications that showed up on your phone as a chat head. And that did super well. Like I put it as an APK and XDA, and I think it did 40,000 downloads just from the APK. And then I released it eventually, and it did like 100,000 downloads in a week. And I think it was like a free 2-week trial, and then it was paid, which was like $1.79 or something. So like it did.
So it's like $1 to $1 a month, or
no. It was just like a flat fee. Like you get to try it for 2 weeks. If you like it, you can pay for it, and it was like $1.79. So it did okay. And that was kind of my, like, it didn't end up becoming my income stream. It's not up anymore, but it was kind of my proof that like I could make money doing this.
Right.
But then when I started actually getting contract work, I kind of liked that a little bit better, because there wasn't the pressure that I have to build something cool, then I have to go and market it, and then I have to go and get money. It's like, you guys are going to pay me to build something. And even if I think what I'm building for you is a terrible idea, you guys are going to pay me at the end of it.
Either way, you're getting paid. So, I see what you're saying. It's just more like secure. Like, like I don't know how old you are, and I don't know if you want to tell people how old you are, but you don't look like an old guy, and you've got a lot of experience, you've done a lot of things, but I'm sure you're at the point of your life where like I'm 30, and like I need consistency. I can't when I mean, I don't want to talk about myself. I knew I wasn't going to say. I said just before we started, I'm going to try not to talk about myself.
It's a conversation. It's a conversation.
Yeah. So I was like, back when I first started, I could take the gamble, take the risk, and like, let's see if I can make money, whatever. If it fails, who cares? But like consistency, I see what you're saying about the contract work. Consistency is important. You got to have money coming in, got a family, you got bills, you got those things. Well, that's
totally.
really cool.
I'm 31, by the way. I'm not afraid to tell people.
Okay. Some people are, I don't know. I don't like to like put people on the spot and be like,
that's cool. I get it.
How old are you?
I mean, I feel like people could just lie if they don't want to answer. So
true enough. Yeah. So that's really cool. Wow. I don't think I've met anybody personally who was actually able to make like a living wage doing app development, like putting apps on the App Store. So that's really cool.
I mean, it was a living wage for maybe 6 months. And then it was, if I had maintained it and if I had kept building new features, it was, so we kind of spoke about this on the podcast, where how you do your courses and at what point does it turn into a job. And for me, it was really cool for a while. And then I wanted to do something else, but I wasn't going to make money from this app if I didn't continue with it. So then it turned into a job, and then it was like, okay,
not fun anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So now you pretty much focus exclusively on doing contract work for companies then.
Yeah.
Like you don't put up any apps to the App Store anymore, like nothing at all.
I do. Okay. So all the apps that I've ever built for myself have always been apps that I wanted because they didn't exist. And then I'd put them up because, maybe other people like it. I don't really put them up to make money. I don't really promote them. Like the most promotion I do is I send emails to, Android police, hey, I released this app if you're interested. And they might feature it in, top 10 apps of the week that are new or something. So I have one app on the Play Store that still makes me like a couple $100 a month, which I maintain, but also that's the same thing. I maintain it because I use it. So it's fun for me to maintain it. It's not
like, you're saying.
Yeah. But aside from that, all my work is contract work. And also it fits in really well because I like working on different things. So when you do contract work, I can take a contract on for 3 months. And at the end of it, if I like it and the people that I'm contracting with want to extend it, I can do it for longer. But if I don't like it, there's not this awkwardness where it's like you have to quit a job or you feel like you have to stay. It's like, no, there's a finite amount of time and I got to work on this and all these other opportunities come up. So now I can go and work for this cool startup for 6 months. And then, if I want to go traveling for 6 months, there's no obligation again to quit my job. And there's also not that fear that, I'm going to quit my job and have to explain to my next permanent employer why I've not been working for 6 months. Because contract, they don't care. They just ask you, like, do you have the experience? can you do the job? And then that's the only thing they care about. And I feel like when you're a permanent employee, there's more things involved, because at least in my head and from some of the experiences that I've seen, people think you're flaky if you're not consistently working forever.
Yeah.
And
8 hours
that's
a
not how I
day,
work.
5 days a week,
Yeah.
like forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like even like as a permanent employee, as a contractor, I could message my work and be like, I'm not feeling well, I'm not coming in tomorrow. But as a permanent employee, there's this fear like, oh, it's a sick day, so I've used up one of my sick days, so now I've only got. Whereas a contractor, it's like I deliver the work, so it doesn't matter.
Like judgment from like peers. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, he's calling in sick, like
Exactly.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You make it sound so great. Like you make, you really do.
I mean that's how it is to me, and I really like it because also it's like a meritocracy thing, right? Where you can be in a job with developers who are permanent, who are not good, but for whatever reason they're still there because it's really hard to get rid of them,
right?
Or people think. Whereas when you're a contractor, you don't get the job if you're not good enough, and you don't stay if you're not good enough. And as long as you're good enough, people don't care if I disappear for 6 hours because I've gone out, as long as the work that they wanted to be done is done. Whereas when you're like, I remember being a permanent employee and having no work to do, but I still have to go into the office and sit at my desk for 8 hours. And I'm not allowed to be on my phone, and I'm not allowed to be on YouTube, but I still have to be there. And if I said to them, I have no work to do, I'm going home, they would be like, well, you're not going to get paid. But as a contractor, they're not going to have me in and have no work to do. And on occasion, there's been one occasion where I finished a project really early, and I said to the guy, like, the project's done, I want to go home. And he was like, you can go home or you can stay here and you can just go on YouTube. So I was like, so you're going to pay me to just stay here for 2 weeks and go on YouTube? And he was like, yes. So I was on YouTube for 2 weeks. You know, why not?
That's funny. That's you know, what you just said is I've had this conversation with my brother before. He's a permanent employee. He's a civil engineer who works for the city. And I've had this because I thought about this, like, if I was to get a job, like what would I do? And I'd be like, even if I got a full-time position, I would definitely immediately try and negotiate to get into a contract position. Like, you know, talk to them and be like, look, like, because there's advantages for an employer also. Like, they don't have to pay all the insurances. There's a bunch, all the benefits. If you get benefits, there's a bunch of things that all the accounting, they don't have to worry about these things. They just pay you a wage, cut you a check, and you're on your way. But like, you essentially could still be basically a full-time employee. You just don't have all those things. And then so there's good things on both sides. Like for you have freedom. You don't have to, like, the bullshit that you just talked about where like, there's no work, but I have to be at work. I can't go on. It's like you have to sit in idle mode and just like pretend to do something, which is like so boring. You can't go on YouTube. You can't go on your phone. You just like have to stare at a screen and pretend. Like, that sounds like a nightmare.
No, but it's in my head. It's like when you're a permanent employee, and like, I have nothing against being permanent, right? Because it works for some people. And I can imagine there'll be a time at some point where I want, like, maybe I really like company and I want to stay there. Or maybe, you know, there's benefits that I want that I don't get. Or, you know, maybe I just get tired of doing tax returns. So, you know, I'll just do permanent. But for me, it's like when you're a permanent employee, they're paying you for your time. So if you have no work to do, you still have to give us your time. Whereas I feel like when you're freelance, they're paying you for what you deliver. So when it's finished, it's finished. If you finish 2 months early, you go home. And like, yes, I lose out because I'm not continuously being paid, but you go and get, like, you get your next gig. Whereas when you're an employee, I just feel like it's, I don't know, I guess it's kind of like a freedom thing. Like freelancing to me is like, I have the freedom to do the work. And then if there's no work to do, go and do something else. I have the freedom to leave and I have a notice period, but it's not going to be awkward because it doesn't feel like it's a big deal. You know, you expected me to leave at some point. Like, I just feel like you have more freedom. And also there's this kind of like, so for example, employees get performance reviews, right? Which is, to me, was always, when I was a permanent employee for like the 1.5 years, was like, it's not cool because like you don't have a real metric of what you're reviewing. You're just reviewing me against someone else. Yeah. Whereas when you're a freelancer, you don't have that. Your performance review is, did you deliver the work or did you not? And yeah,
it makes sense for sure. So like, so how did you get like your first freelance gig? Like, how did that go down?
So my first freelance gig was, I think I just applied for a ton of jobs on Upworks, and I got really lucky because
Okay, so Upwork online somewhere.
I've been on Upwork since, and since then I don't think I've had any work like offers. But the first couple of times I got on it, I got one which was from a company in London, and I was based near London at the time, so I actually went. So it was all like I met them on Upworks, and then after that it was all offline. And I went to the office, and they were like, "Right, we're going to pay you. I think it was like £1,500 to build this app." Right, which is in the freelance world like that's super cheap, but for me it was just like, I'm going to get a portfolio item, so let's do this.
Yeah.
So I think it took me maybe 3 months to build the first one, and then they were like, right, and then it was a white label project, so built this one. Okay, can you rebrand it for this company and we'll pay you £200, and can you rebrand it for this company and we'll pay you another £200. So I did that for a while, and then I started applying for contracts, which was through job boards like I think like hired.com and all these other different various ones. And I actually so I got a job with a startup, and the reason I got a job with that startup is because the two guys that interviewed me, which were the Android lead and the iOS lead, they were very much like, we only care if you can do the job, and we don't care that you basically have no experience except for these couple of freelance projects. And then I got the job, and they were super happy with it, and then it just took off from there.
Right. So it basically, yeah, like you had to scramble-ish for the first couple, and then once you made a couple connections, it became pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, I also I always advocate now for new developers is just like build something and put it on the App Store or the Play Store, because like as developers, it's super easy for us to demonstrate our skills without having to, go through that process of working somewhere that we hate just so we can say I've got 1 year's experience. Because like people don't care. Like development is one of the few like industries where you can have no degree, you could have no education whatsoever. You could literally, like, I'm sure what people do with your channel is just spend all their time on YouTube, learn as much as you can, and now you're qualified. And the only thing you have to prove to demonstrate that you're qualified is I built this thing, or give me a test and I'll build this thing for you, and in an hour you'll see I can do the job. So
what about like I guess, yeah, so another advantage of like doing this contract work is like data structures, algorithms is really the big one. Data structures isn't so big. You don't really have to know, like, because the interview is just like, hey, can you do the job? Looks like you can do the job. Okay.
It depends. So there's been interviews where I got into the interview and the guy was asking me questions that I don't know the answer to. He was like, what's the log n of this thing, or how do you sort a list, but without using the actual one utility function that you'd actually use to sort a list, and all of these kind of things. So those ones is just like, I'm not even going to waste your time because I don't know the answer. And also one of the other good things about being a freelancer is I don't want to have to learn that stuff to get this job. I just go somewhere else. Because so that first app that I mentioned that took off, so it ended up that I got an email from somebody at Facebook because they'd seen the app, and they was like, hey Rob, do you want to come and work at Facebook? Right. And in my head, I thought that was the offer. Do you want to come and work at Facebook? But it wasn't. It was, do you want to come and interview to work at Facebook?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, cool. I'll see what it's about. So I did the first stage, which is just like a chat. Absolutely fine. And then I got to the second stage, and the second stage was a code test where they give you a link and you go to a website so they can watch you code and they can make sure you're not going to different tabs and all this kind of thing. And the question was like to do with that kind of thing, which is, program this thing which you're never ever going to have to program in real life, and that nobody's ever going to be able to do in real life. And if you can do it, then you get to the next stage. And I just bowed out because like for me, it's just like, tell me what you actually want to pay me to do, and then see if I can do that. And all the jobs that I've had have been ones where like, hey Rob, what's your experience? I give them an overview of my experience. There might be a code test, and the only good code tests I've done are the ones where they actually want you to build something that's a real world app.
Yeah,
and then
those make sense. Those make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like what I think about the algorithms, data structures thing, like I think about this all the time. Like, why do companies even use those tests? Because they're really not an indication of the job, like at all. Especially with like Android. Like it would make more sense to me like to have like one dedicated data structures and algorithms expert on within like a group of like 50 to 100 people.
Sure.
And then like when those questions come up, you explain the problem to him and he goes, okay, this sort of thing, this is how you would solve that problem. Boom, they go implement it.
Yeah.
It seems like a complete waste of time to have everybody it takes like even a person who is already kind of skilled, it would take them probably like 3 months minimum to study enough data structures and algorithms to pass any of those tests.
Exactly.
Like it takes a long time to just because you got to know so much about it.
Yeah.
It just seems so weird to me. I think that the only reason they do it still is maybe because it's like the easiest way to figure out if a person has spent a lot of time programming and if they have a pretty like high IQ. It's like the easiest way to do that.
It's like taking an exam when you're in high school where, you know, let's say, you know, you need to do that when they teach you maths and they teach you all of these things that you don't need to know if you're not going to do physics or, you know, some really high, like I don't need to know what Pythagoras theorem is, but they make you learn that when really all they need to do is like, can you add, can you subtract? Right. These are real world skills. And I feel like for development, it's the same thing. And I also feel like the reason they do it is because they don't have a good quick barometer of do you have the skill. But like some of the companies that I've worked at, like, well, at least one company that I've worked at, their interview process I thought was really good, which is they give you a test, but the test is like pseudocode. So they don't care like how you code, they care how you think. And so they'll ask you questions like, right, we've got this situation, how would you program this? And then you just, you know, write down like some pseudocode. I'd have this class, it would have this methods. And then they might ask you questions like, why did you choose a singleton? And why did you not choose to do, you know, a data class or whatever? And at the end of it, you have a much better idea of, can this person do the job based on how they think and how they approach this problem versus do they know these facts that they're probably not going to need to know for the entire time that they're at this company.
Definitely, that makes way more sense to me for sure.
Yeah,
it's kind of too bad, I think, but like I'm sure, you know, from the company's perspective, it just makes the most sense optimally. Like they can go through a lot more people and figure out much more quickly who's like at the higher end of like the skill level, like as a bulk, as opposed to like sending everybody like a take-home project, and because that would just it takes a lot more time to like review it and like. Even though that is definitely the better way to do it, I would think. But
yeah, I think so. The other good one I've heard of, I interviewed someone on my podcast and he used to own a mobile development studio and it was all remote. So I asked him like, how did you manage to hire good people? Because you don't actually get to see them work. And his thing was that the way that he found out to do it was basically give them a test, but pay them to do the test. Because really good developers, they won't do your test because I don't need to do your test. I'll go and get a job somewhere else. But when you're paying them to do the test, if they really want the job and they feel like they can do it, they'll do it. And if not, they just won't waste their time. So I felt like that was probably a good one. Because if
kinda
someone
like
came
a
to
trick.
me, it's like if someone came to me and said, I mean, it's happened a bunch where they're like, we just need you to do this code test before the interview. And I'm like, no, because I might do it and I might do a really good job and I wasted 2 hours because I get there and I don't want the job. So I thought this was a good way to do it. If you want to pay me to do it, then that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's like a little trick. That's a good idea. So how do you when you're freelancing and you're getting your client work now, how do you figure out pricing? How do you know what to charge?
I'll be honest, like I don't have a good kind of way
structured
to work.
system.
Yeah. So most of the work, pretty much most of the work that I've done has been they pay you a day rate and the contract is like 3 to 6 months and it's not necessarily pay you to do a project. Because when people pay me to do a project, that's when it gets, I don't know, because I know, for example, the day rate's supposed to be this and it will take you 6 months. It will take me 6 months to do your project. So theoretically, you should be paying me this day rate across 6 months. And then the price becomes humongous because they can go on Upworks and some company will say, hey, we'll do your project for $15. So the pricing strategy, I think the best way that I found to go about it is kind of see what other people are charging for that kind of work. Or if you know, like we all know developers who've done stuff, how much did you either pay someone at your company to do it or how much would you charge to do it? And then find a good medium. But I also feel like don't like whatever you think the price should be. If you think the price for this project should be $5,000, you should charge $7,000 because I feel like everybody undervalues what their work is worth. And also it always runs longer. And once you're in like a fixed project kind of cost, you can't go back and say, oh, it's going to take me 2 more months. So you need to give me $2,000 more. So you have to kind of factor all that in as well. But the majority of the work that I've done has been like based on a day rate. And basically the way that that works is you start at this day rate because you're a junior, and then it just goes up and up and up as you're progressing. And then it gets to a point where it's like, you can basically, especially if you've been at a company for a bit and they know you're really good. So like I have a friend who's really good, and he'll be at a company for 6 months, and then in 6 months his contract comes up for renewal, and he'll be like, my price is now whatever, and it will be, you know, double what his price was before.
Renegotiation time, basically.
Yeah. But he always goes for like the top level, and that would always scare me a little bit because it seems like it's so much, but he thinks that's what he's worth. And the company's already seen his work, so they're always like, well, that's fine, we'll pay that. So yeah, I like my only thing there would be like, whatever you think your time is worth, you should charge more.
Yeah. I thought about this a lot. Like I don't do client work, but I've thought about like what it would take to get me to do client work, and like keep me motivated and like things like that. And I think that I would probably, at the end of the day, like I'd look at what other people are making, and I like all the things you said, but I think it would really come down to like, what would I have to charge to keep me happy? Like that would, and like, cause that's like important. I think like, I think if you're just starting, it's not like you just want to like do whatever, it doesn't matter. But like, as you start getting more work and like consistent work, you have to like, I don't know. I think your happiness is a big factor to like the things you deliver, how like, and then like if you're happier, you deliver better products. If you deliver better products, you accelerate your career better. It's like all of these things. I don't know. That's just kind of how I think about it.
I would put happiness at the top of whatever you do, because even like me doing freelance work, I won't take a contract if I don't think it will be fun to work on. For one, like if somebody brings me in and they say, we've got an app and it's got 1,000 crashes and we want you to fix it, I don't want to do that.
Yikes.
Like, that's no. But then also the other side of it is like, I hate working in an office. So I started out working in an office because that's all the roles that they were. And then after I'd been somewhere for a while, one of my things would be, I won't put the price up, but if you want to renew the contract, I want to be able to work from home 2 days a week. And so then I negotiate that. And then if they want to renew it again, I want to work from 3 days a week. And then eventually it's got to a point now where I'll only, like now, based on my personal preference, I would only take work if it can be remote. Because I don't, especially with COVID, like I think it's proven to everybody that 99% of cases, nobody has to be in an office to do everything. Like the technology is there, and there's no reason not to use it. So I can do the work from home. I'd like to do the work from wherever I am. And that's my happiness factor is I want the freedom to be like, I'll do exactly what you want me to do, but let me do it from where I want. And if I want to be in a coffee shop, that's great. If I want to be in the gym for an hour and then just come around the corner and I'm back home and carry on working, that should be my choice. So
I think it's like it's in the same sort of vein as what we were talking about earlier, where like if you have a full-time position, they want you there all the time, even if they know like it's like this stupid thing where like even if like things slow down, you have to be at your desk looking busy. You can't go on YouTube, you can't go on your phone. It's like it's like the same sort of thing where like they want you to come into the office for some reason. And you're like, and like, there's really no need. Like you don't need to be there. And it's just like this weird thing that they require that doesn't really make any sense. Like,
100%. Yeah. The busy work was always the most confusing thing to me. Cause like in the first job that I had, there'd be so many periods where I have no work, but if the manager walks past, I have to pretend like I'm doing something. Even though he knows I have no work because he's given me no work, and I know I have no work, but suddenly I have to pull up like, you know, some sort of code studio and just be sitting there looking at like a HTML
in deep
file.
thought.
Like I'm pretty sure when I was in that job, I used to be web browsing, and then if somebody would walk past, I'd just do like view source on the page, so suddenly it looks like I'm actually doing some work, and I have nothing to do.
That's clever. That's smart. Yeah. That's a clever one. Oh nope, just checking out the source. I want to see what little design thing is. Oh, that's great. So more specifically about like the stuff that you're working on, I want to ask you like what kind of projects have you done, and also what kind of tech stacks do you work with? Do you like, do you strictly get hired for like Android stuff only, or like do you work with other technologies? Like what's your answer to that?
So what was the first part of that question? It skipped my it's gone over my head.
I don't know, start with the tech stack. Do you work with other technologies?
All right, we'll get back to it. So the tech stack is yes, I've only been hired to do Android work, like Java or Kotlin, but that's basically it. And then in terms of like tech stacks I've worked with inside of that, it's pretty like right now, or at least in the last few years, it's pretty standard. Like you have Android, your backend is usually always REST. Recently it's been GQL, which is kind of nice. And then, I mean, aside from that, it's not been anything that's overly exciting. Like I always find the backend stuff interesting because every company I've worked at has a different backend stack that they use. And almost every company that I've worked at during the time that I've worked there, they've had like 3 different backend solutions because for whatever reason, there doesn't seem to be like this standardized, or you should just use this. So
yeah, there's definitely no like I for web development and like backend stuff, I like Django, I like,
yeah,
Postgres, and then,
yeah,
classic REST API to connect to the
yeah,
app. But
yeah,
like, yeah, I've had conversations with people, and there's really like, there's just so many options, and there's a lot of good options.
yeah,
There's really like, it's very much, I think, just a preference thing. And
yeah.
like, there's subtle differences between like the different ways to build your front end and your back end, but like at the end of the day, they're all very similar. So
Yeah.
I think that's why it's just like such a wide array of things.
Yeah, I think so. I think people also choose stuff based on what they know because they think
Yeah,
what
of
they know
course.
is the best.
Yeah.
Whereas like for mobile developers, like we on iOS you're going to code in Swift, and on Android you're probably now going to code in Kotlin, and there's not really that like, oh, there's this wide range of different things we could use. Like this is the standard. Whereas the backend is like, oh, I'm really good at Redis, so let's build everything on that.
Yeah.
But for my own apps I use just in case you're interested, Firebase, if you've worked with that before, because that's mostly free, and I try and do everything that I do for myself mostly free. So
okay, so my actually next question was going to be about Firebase.
okay,
So
awesome.
do your clients, like, do a lot of clients use Firebase, or you like to just no? So
They
I
should,
think
they should, but nobody does, or at least nobody that I've worked
so.
with
You
does.
would advocate that, like, if you had a large project, like I don't know, I don't know what a fairly large project is. I guess 100,000 like daily users or something like that.
Yeah.
You would say like Firebase would be a good choice to use.
I would say it depends, but I mostly work with startups, which is, to me,
Right.
Firebase makes sense because one, it's super easy to get off the ground. It doesn't really like, there's no back end developers needed. You just need front end.
Yeah.
It's cheap because it's pay as you go. So if your startup does well, it might be expensive for a while until you switch to something else.
Right.
But if your startup doesn't do well, you saved a bunch of money. And also it offers you so many things. Like I've worked at companies where if you take away the database stuff from Firebase and you just look at like remote config and messaging, like I've worked at companies where they pay ridiculous amounts of money to companies that just handle feature flags. Like they'll pay, $200,000 a year to a company that all it provides you with is feature flags. And Firebase,
I don't know what is feature flag.
So a feature flag is, let's say, I released version 1 of the app today, and there's a feature in it that I don't want to be live for 3 weeks.
Oh, so remote config.
It's literally just hidden behind like a if is this flag on, and they'll and like these companies charge so much money, and Firebase does it for free. So it's like, even if you're not going to use the database and you don't want to have to worry about playing with Firestore and getting your queries right and all that kind of thing, it offers you so many things for free that there's just like there's so many upsides to it. Even for targeting, like it offers you like so I went on a Firebase machine learning like workshop that Google did, I think the end of last year. And one of the things that I thought was super cool that you also get for free is if you use Firebase Analytics, it gives you predictive analytics. So you can target people that Firebase predicts are likely to spend money based on actions that they've taken in your app, that other users have taken in your app and then went on to spend money. And you can target users that they think are going to churn based on actions that other users have taken in the same vein. So you could send them a push notification saying, here's $200 in-game dollars to spend so that they might stay in your app for longer. Like there's so many cool things you can do with it.
Yeah, Firebase is for sure a great product, 100%. Like the tools that they have that are mostly free. The only thing that I would say about Firebase is like, the scale at scale issue, because at scale it can probably get very expensive. Yeah. But then still, like, it doesn't matter. Like if, like you said, I agree with you 100%. Like if you're a startup, a solo developer, it just makes sense. Like start with Firebase,
Yeah.
Get your product out there. It's going to be
Yeah.
mostly free. You don't have to worry about anything until you hit like even probably 10, 20,000 users.
Exactly.
Like
And then that's a
it'll
good
be like
problem to
literally
have.
free. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
that's a good problem to have. Oh, look,
Yeah.
I can get users.
I've got too many users.
Now let's figure out how to get away from Firebase.
Yeah,
That would be
100%.
the
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Because as a startup, all you want is an MVP, and the MVP should be the quickest
Cheapest
to
possible.
build, cheapest possible. And in my opinion, that would be the way to do it. So.
Yeah. And it's not like Firebase. It's not like it's bad either. It's like a quick, cheap way that it's great. But then you might have to worry at scale. So then it's like when you have that problem of scale, then think about moving away and like building your own server, figuring out all that, hiring some backend engineers.
But also by that point, you know what your tech stack should look like, because you know like what you're trying to do. Whereas when you're starting, it changes so much because you don't know what it is really that you're trying to do. You don't know what's going to work. So you just want to be able to do things as quickly as you can. And then once you figure out what works, then it makes sense. Like, oh yeah, we should be using AWS and we should be on GQL, and then let's go and build this. So
cool. We agree then.
We do.
All right. Do you maintain any legacy products? I know you sort of answered this earlier. You said like you wouldn't take a job if it had a bunch of bugs, like an old project. But like I guess my question is, do you ever work on any like old projects to come in and fix them, or do you currently like maintain any like older kind of projects? Like we're talking like stuff with like async task, like those kinds of things.
So for clients, I think I've had one gig, which was a few years ago, where I got brought in to fix a bunch of bugs, and I basically ended up rewriting the app because whoever wrote it before was horrible, and it was faster to do that than it was to fix things. But in terms of my own apps, yes. So because I have a bunch of apps, right? So I have one, for example, it's a sleep timer. So it does one thing, which is you set a timer, and when that timer goes off, it sends the Bluetooth pause command to whatever app you set to go to sleep, and so it goes to sleep. So there's no like ongoing features, there's no development work. It does what it's supposed to do. So that I maintain, and every now and again I rewrite it because I think I started it and it was async tasks, and then I got a little bit more knowledge and I had to update it to support the next API version. So then I started it again and it was timer tasks, and then I got a little bit more knowledge, and then I went back and I wrote in RX Java, and I'm sure like the next time I get to it, it's going to be Kotlin Flow. So those I maintain, and then a couple of my other apps so my main app that makes a little bit of money, I still maintain. And that is like, there's a lot of legacy code in there. There's a lot of like singletons all over the place that there shouldn't be, and static code that shouldn't be static, and things that you can't test because I wrote it before I even knew what testing was. So I maintain that, and that is always to update really hard, mostly because I wrote it before I was even aware of tests. So I have like when you go back to a code base a year later and it was already in a bad shape to start with, I don't know what's going to happen if I change this piece of code. And so I used to do it manually, where I'd test every single feature before a release. And now it's like, I don't even remember the different permutations of what I expect to happen. So when I started updating it last time, it was basically, I rewrote a bunch of stuff. I changed some stuff. I fixed some stuff. And then I started writing tests for it. And then I had to remember, what exactly am I supposed to be testing? Because it's not super clear what this is supposed to do. But it's getting to a better place. And yeah, if people, I mean, to me, testing is probably the way forward for me, at least. Because if I had done that before, I wouldn't have an issue now. You can just run the test. Oh, it still works. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that's a like natural progression of like any software developer. It's like you start, you just like trying to make it work, basically. Like you're doing manual testing.
So much effort when you're new as well.
Yeah, and then like testing, there's just too much. It's too much of a burden to like learn about that at the start. But then like as you go through the process of like, okay, I got to go maintain this thing, and like it's a nightmare, as you just sort of described. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, how can I make this less of a nightmare? Oh, testing. Okay. And then you structure your code in a way that is like less coupled. So like you change something, it's not going to, the scaffolding isn't going to fall apart. And, then you write tests, so you can just press a button and it can test everything. You get the green check marks. Oh, okay. Looks good. I don't even need to know what I'm testing. It looks good. I thought of this before. And it's just like, it's like a natural progression, I think.
Yeah, one of the things that I find funny is people, when I get to companies, they're always like, we want to build this new feature. How long is it going to take? And everyone will say, it's going to take 6 months. And they'll be like, well, why is it going to take 6 months? Because, it's a really simple thing to build. And the answer is almost always because, and the answer I always give anyways, is because the best example I have is it's basically like Jenga. It's like you have this code stack. I don't know what's going to happen if I touch this bit, like if the whole thing's going to fall down or not. And then that's when people are like, oh yeah, I see, I've played Jenga before, I get it.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, that's what testing avoids is I know exactly, well, I might not even know what happens when I pull that thing out, but I'll be able to find out in 10 seconds whether it was bad or not.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I have a lot more questions, but we've already hit like 45-minute mark. I don't know. Do you want to do another podcast?
Yeah, I'm happy to go again. Yeah, definitely.
We could do because I'm not even really halfway through the things I wanted to ask you.
Oh, okay,
so
cool.
Yeah, this is super interesting to me because I've never, like I said, I've never met like a freelancer personally and like gotten to talk to him. Yeah, you make it like, as all of you will find out if you listen to the podcast that we did last time where Rob interviewed me, I stay far away from freelancing and like client work because I find that, what was the thing I said? The work or the
you
money,
had a really good metric.
Yeah, it was like the money per unit of stress is very bad compared to the money per unit of stress of me just like making courses, making videos.
Yeah.
But like you make it sound fun. You make it but I think because you're so selective probably.
Yeah.
And like
I was gonna say, like, I don't know if I've sold you on it, but I would say it can be fun. It just really, I think the biggest thing is how much commitment do you have and how much are you willing to be selective? Because if you got a mortgage and you currently live like paycheck to paycheck, you can't be like, oh, I'm not going to take that job,
right?
Because you can't. Like, but if you have that fallback, or you're willing to say, I'll give myself 3 months to find the job that I really want, then you can. Or like if you're as good as you are, it's like you basically have the pick, so you just have to go and find, oh, I want to work on that. And then when they come back to you and be like, we want to offer you 6 months, you could be like, no, I want to do it for 3 months. And then if after 3 months you like it,
that sounds great.
Yeah, it's like that's the best thing I find about being a freelancer, is that it's all negotiable. Essentially, you get to set the terms, and when you get to like a really senior level, like you get to set the terms. So as long as it makes you happy and you think it's going to make you happy, give it a go. And if it doesn't make you happy, 3 months is not a huge amount of time to lose of your life at something that you didn't super enjoy.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's end it here then, because I mean, I could easily go for another hour, and let's just do another podcast, because I got cool. if you want. I mean,
yeah, totally. Yeah, we'll go again. Awesome.
Cool. All right. So everybody, if you guys want to listen to the interview where Rob interviewed me, we did it 2 weeks ago. We talked about a lot of stuff. It was basically very focused on me, though, about like how I got to the position that I did with YouTube and programming, how I started. We talked about Flutter. We talked about Kotlin. We talked about Mac versus PC. We talked about everything. We talked about all kinds of stuff.
We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. So wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen to that. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I don't know. Probably anywhere there's podcasts. Apparently
anywhere there's podcasts. And if you can't find it wherever you get podcasts, then let me know, because I thought I'd covered all the bases. So
okay, cool. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Rob. I enjoyed it. And I definitely, like I said, I want to do it again. So
cool. Yeah, I'm up for it. You let me know when, and we'll do it again. Definitely.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.